Hello, everyone, and welcome to USPTO Hour, the Trademarks Edition. It is July 22nd, 2026, and as you can see today, we are going to be talking about a couple of hot topics, updates to Trademark Center, and an upcoming change in how you might file your Madrid Protocol international trademark applications. I am also going to highlight a couple of trademark scams that are currently circulating, just to make sure you're aware of those and can keep away from those scams. We like to think these are all important subjects for all of you brand owners, attorneys, paralegals, trademark administrators out there. We want to make sure you have all the best information possible. I'm Jason Lott, the managing attorney for Trademarks Customer Outreach, and I'm joined today by Peter Beaudry, the legal administrator for Trademarks Examination Systems, and also Matt Schwab, the senior legal administrator for Trademarks Technology and Systems. Let's go ahead and get to today's topics. So as you can see, we're going to cover three main things. We're going to talk about expanded filing capabilities in Trademark Center. Then we're going to talk about filing an outbound, wait for it, filing an outbound Madrid Protocol international trademark application through the World Intellectual Property Organization, also known as WIPO. There are going to be demos with both of those explanations. And then I'm going to give you an update on some trademark scams that are currently swirling to make sure you can keep an eye out for those so you don't become a victim. So that's what it's going to look like for today. And I am now going to hand it over to Matt, who is going to talk about some expanded filing capabilities inside Trademark Center. So Matt, over to you. Oh, wait, you know what? Before I do that, I didn't do Matt's bio. So Matt Schwab, you've probably already met him in the past, but he's the Senior Legal Administrator for Trademarks Technology and Systems in the Office of the Deputy Commissioner for Trademark Administration. He focuses on many, many things, including policy and security issues related to trademark filing, and he also assists with the development of new technologies for the office. So now, Matt, let me hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jason. I didn't really feel ready to go without that, so I appreciate it. I'm gonna I'm gonna demo a couple of things towards the end, but I'm gonna take this opportunity not just to talk about what's coming at the end of the month with our next deployment, but sort of overall what's coming down the road for Trademark Center. We've started to message more. If you're subscribed to our trademark alerts, you might already know this. We've started to message more about it at a more frequent cadence, and things are going to start moving a little faster too. So I'll run through some of that, what to expect, and then specifically what to expect starting next Thursday with some of the new capabilities we're rolling out in July. But first, the global view, the overall view of Trademark Center. What do we want to do with the page? We want to bring together search, filing, and status. As you know, or as you may know, if you're a long-time listener, we've historically cabined these into separate bundles of software with different names. You may know T's and tests and TSDR and a lot of other four-letter acronyms that start with T. So we want to bring these together, but we do realize that these systems have very different functions and don't necessarily all need to have the same design. So we also want to maintain a separate design and approach for each of the different needs that people have. Searching needs are very different from status, or very different from filing, and they may come in a different order depending on the type of user that you are. So we want to bring them together, not sort of in the way that we would have three systems together in a trench coat, but maybe not too far off from that. So what we want to have are consistent navigation and page elements. So when you're in Trademark Center, you can move seamlessly between the functions you need to do. You can have the same menus, the same choices, the same layout, the same sort of look and feel, but the systems are not necessarily lockstep integrated with one another. So they do have some degree of separateness. You can link from one to the other, you can move from one to the other, but they are not just three different parts of the same underlying system. That's for stability and usability purposes. So we continue to evaluate this approach going forward, but that is the overall basic idea. And our target is to be there in less than a year. We'll have a new design coming soon for the Trademark Center homepage. The new design is going to, again, if you are subscribed to Trademark Alerts, you've seen that the USPTO.gov webpage is going to have a new design coming soon. That soon is tomorrow, July 23rd. We are also going to be redesigning our homepage and to both to track some of the changes that you'll see in there, and overall just to modernize it and acknowledge that we're starting to really beef up the number of options in Trademark Center, and we need a more robust menu set. So those of you who woke up today with more robust menu set on your bingo card, you can cross it off. We're going to have that. We'll also be looking at docket and sharing enhancements. Then those will come next year largely. We'll be making some along the way, but the focus over the next many months will be to make sure that everything that you can do in T's, you'll be able to do in Trademark Center. So we'll be moving new things into Trademark Center, and we'll also be refining existing things in Trademark Center. And the goal, again, being anything that you would have been able to do in T's, you'll be able to do in Trademark Center, and then some. We'll have, as you know, we've focused on guided modes that we didn't have in the past. For example, the initial application. We'll ask you some questions before you can get started. We'll direct you to the right type of form instead of just kind of having 6 different forms for supplemental, collective membership, standard trademark, all those other things. Some of the forms will be consolidated though. One of the issues we had with T's is there were more than 50 forms. They were separate. It was sometimes difficult to keep them organized and keep them in lockstep with one another. So we will have a smaller number of forms, but we will still offer sort of a classic form-based approach, especially we know our practitioners appreciate that. They may not need the guidance of the wizard, so they'll be able to go straight to the post-registration form that they intend to file. Next slide, please, Jason. Because AI is everywhere, you won't be able to get out of this without hearing about it, but I'll be brief. I just want you to know that we do recognize that a lot of different people have a lot of different feelings about AI and how it's being used. And so our goal in trademarks is to focus on how can we be helpful and how can we make it something that it's at the user's option to use or not. So one of these things that we've done is Class Act. That's the system that runs and automatically processes design search codes, pseudomarks, and international class when those things aren't provided in the application. So far, it's processed more than 250,000 cases. And this has taken a big load off of some of our employees in the backlog. It's also made these marks more searchable earlier on in the application process. So you will be able to search for design marks instead of waiting for the codes to be manually assigned. You'll be able to search them shortly after they are submitted. Another AI item that we rolled out, mark description and color claim suggestions. You may have noticed these in the initial applications. We weren't sure. We tried to make some projections about what would the uptake be, and the uptake is higher than we thought it would be, especially at this phase. It's used by more than 40% of our applicants right now. We could tell that some of our applicants were using AI to assist them externally. We thought it might be better if we could bring some of that AI assistance into the application, put some more guidelines on it, and make sure that it would be something that would match up with what we're looking for. Again, so far, more than 40% of applications are coming in with the mark description color claim being provided by the AI in the filing system. And finally, as we look to the future, based on these outcomes that we've seen here and the success that we've had, we are evaluating additional assistance for procedural and informal issues during the application process. Again, it's not moving into substantive issues at this point. It's not moving into a lawyer in a box, but there are certainly procedural and informal issues that especially less experienced filers may tend to may not understand what we're asking for in a particular field that we believe we can pretty successfully pick up and let them know about before they submit and waste their time and possibly their money. Next slide, please, Jason. So coming next week, we will be moving some functionality into Trademark Center. You'll see the request for extension of time to respond to an office action, request for extension of time to respond to an expungement or re-exam proceeding, the Section 7 request. For our practitioners, they may be more familiar with the bulk change of correspondence and withdrawal of attorney forms that will be added in there. And finally, to order a copy of your registration certificate, you can order the additional presentation copy with this form, a relatively simple form. Next slide, please. So now I will switch over. I will share my screen. This is the test environment that you'll see. I'm also going to show some other things in our test environments. So I've asked that they be kept stable. Test environments being what they are, though, it adds a little bit of rush to the demonstration because things could be slightly different or might not work as expected. But so here's your first glimpse at that page. And when you look at these menus and the way they're laid out, we'll be moving towards a similar function in Trademark Center as well. Moving on to the current incarnation of Trademark Center, Jason's going to talk later in the presentation about some of the scams that we've been seeing and some of the measures that we're taking. We have a new screen for when you apply to register a trademark. We've tried to put some of these concerns up front. So Jason will cover this. I won't read through everything here, but we definitely note that people who apply for a trademark are not expecting to be contacted within 5 or 10 minutes of their application with an email or a text or sometimes even a phone call to a real person or increasingly AI, telling them that they need to do something extra or that there's a problem or something like that. So we have this reminder that we'll be putting up to let people know we don't communicate in that way. Your information is public. Please be advised that people can contact you and give not only tips about what scams might you see, but how can you protect yourself. Going to the new items, I'd like to show two, both in the amend or update a filing flow. So amend or update a filing is currently in production, in use for the voluntary amendment. I'm going to show the Section 7 integration with this. Oops. So this is the amend or update a filing flow that we're used to in production. However, this time it's a registered mark. So we can see the registration number here. We can see it's a test case. We've got some test data in there. It's not necessarily a real mark. But changing address or representation, or the CAR form and the withdrawal of attorney form, are handled up at the top, as they currently are. In advanced actions, you'll now see an option to choose between requesting to amend the registration certificate under Section 7 or entering a voluntary amendment. Now, both of these actions have a high noncompliance rate. So when we get these, many times we are not able to honor the request or enter the information that's been requested for us to enter. So many times the Section 7 will result in a post-registration office action due to an attempt or request to change things that can't be changed at this stage. And the voluntary amendment, likewise, for registered marks, there's a very limited batch of data that you're actually allowed to change. You'll go in here and you'll select it, and we will guide you through the options that you are authorized to change. It's very similar to what was in TEAS. Longtime practitioners may note that one or two things are missing. They were left open in TEAS, but they are things that are not that have a 100% post-registration office action denial rate that we're not able to carry over. So your options will be somewhat different, but more in line with what we can actually accept in these filings. The second thing I'd like to show is our multiple record update option. This is more focused towards the practitioners in the group, and we have a few different ways to update multiple records. So you might know these by the names of bulk CAR or bulk withdrawal of attorney, but in general, we have a lot more validation about what needs to be the same between the cases and what we can do than we did in the past. Hopefully, none of you ever entered a bad one of these in the past. It could be a huge mess and take a lot of time for all the parties to clean up if there were any mistakes in this type of form. So we have enhanced the level of validation. You'll start in the amend or update a filing flow when you wish to update multiple records by choosing which one of these you are going to do. So each one of them will have a different set of validation. It'll be explained in the form. But for example, to update the owner's email address, which a very common request, you might choose this first option. In this case, the owner has to be the same. So I've entered as a practitioner a list of serial numbers that I hope are the same. I've got multiple attorneys of record there. So you'll see they'll be called out. There are several attorneys of record. I, in here with the attorney account, am going to need to go and make sure that I'm only entering cases that belong to me. So let's say that I wish to change the owner information for new clients. Here, there's no attorney currently appointed for these, so I'm going to need to appear in the record. So I'll need to change the representation instead. I will be appointing a U.S. licensed attorney. Now for this, this should be the owner who's going to sign. I think these are different owners though. I don't know if I think I have a list with the same owner. There we go. All right, so this tells me, look, this is supposed to be one owner owning multiple serial numbers, updating you as the attorney. However, these are the list of all the different owners in the list here. Please make sure when you search for the owner. So I don't think I have same owners with no attorney. So we won't be able to see that. But essentially for many of these things, you'll have two gamuts to run. The case has to be in the right status, and you have to have the right identical information between the cases. It will vary depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to withdraw as attorney of record, and you have different attorneys, you'll run into the same type of validation. Here we have different owners. You'll have to withdraw as attorney of record from each owner separately. Okay. With that, I will do my best to stop sharing. And we can go back for one final slide. Here's just a timeline for, again, the next steps forward and our path fully into Trademark Center and away from T's. So you can see here, I'm not going to read all the forms, but we've got our plan out through spring, summer of 2026. The goal is to have all these forms done by early spring, and by late spring, early summer, we've had the remaining forms coexisting. We've made sure that everyone's able to make the transition over, and we finally fully retire T's and move completely into Trademark Center. Please be advised, we are always listening to feedback. I can tell you there are several issues that we're in the process of working on. One is a streamlined specimen for an application form registration flow. We've heard the request for that. Another is a streamlined and more obvious placement of the dates of use for use-based applications. And we've also heard many requests for different types of sharing options in the docket. Currently, we have a shareable link that you can share with anyone in your network that you're connected to. We also have direct sharing where you can send it to their docket that will appear immediately without them having to pick it up. But we definitely have heard requests for different kinds of docketing and sharing options, the ability to share all the cases in a docket, not necessarily on an edit view, but even just on a tracking view. So we will be working on those two down the road. All right. Thanks, Jason. I think that's all for my part.
Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate that. All right, now we are going to shift over, and Peter is going to give us some good information about filing an outbound Madrid Protocol trademark application. And of course, got to do his bio, okay, Peter, before you can talk. Peter Beaudry is the legal administrator for Trademarks Examination Systems in the Office of the Deputy Commissioner for Trademark Operations. And in that role, he oversees the internal IT systems that examining attorneys and professional staff use in their mission delivery work. He also leads special projects around operations, process changes. So Peter is the guy who does a lot of the internal sorts of things, and he's going to talk about some changes with regards to international filings. So Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jason, and good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, I normally focus on our internal examination systems, but today I'm going to be talking about our external system. And part of the reason for that is because what you will see is the external filing, but we have a whole internal version as well where we do our examination for these. So don't want to bury the lead. Let's start with the most important and exciting announcement. We are transitioning to the Madrid e-filing system. So for US Office of Origin filings, those are outbound international applications that today go through the TSI, the international system. They will begin we will begin intaking those through the Madrid e-filing system starting on July 31st and through September 30th. You'll be able to file in both TSI and in Madrid e-filing. So think of it like a soft launch period. Basically, we want to encourage people to get into the new Madrid e-filing system so we can make sure that everything is working as well as we think it is in there. So definitely, if you have cause to do this filing, please go and check out Madrid e-filing starting on July 31st. And then beginning on October 1st, all new filings will only be available through the Madrid e-filing system. So TSI will go away beginning on October 1st. So a little bit about the Madrid e-filing systems. If you're not familiar with it, Madrid e-filing is a secure filing system that's run by WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. It's already available through more than 40 national IP offices. And the USPTO has been in talks and worked with WIPO for a long time about potentially adopting this. And so this is one of the reasons that we're really excited to finally be able to join the club on this. So it's used to file international trademark applications based on your US application or registration. So this is for seeking protection in foreign countries. But there is an examination component that has to happen at the USPTO. There's a handoff to WIPO, and they also have their own examination component through WIPO's International Bureau. That's the IB system. So you'll use Madrid e-filing to respond to any international application deficiencies, and you'll also do any irregularity notices through the Madrid e-filing system if you choose to file in that initially. Go next slide. Just so why now, right? And the answer is that there are a lot of benefits to Madrid e-filing. So one of them is just it's a good system. So it's easier communication, and this is actually going to allow us to send informal messages where you can make correction in the international application. So this is something that you can't do today. You'll also be able to respond more easily to irregularity notices from the IB, and the handoff between USPTO to the IB will be a lot faster today. A lot of stuff has to happen in batches, and there are some time delays in the future through the system. It'll be essentially instantaneous. Uh, uh, the fewer delays, it's worth noting that this process is not available today. So today, if you file a international application and the USPTO denies certification, then your only recourse is to file a petition. So having this new informal ability to correct, we're hoping is a positive thing and also save some petitions fees in the future. It's also a slightly simpler system, as you're going to see in our demo. It's very straightforward. Hopefully not so straightforward that it's kind of dry or boring for the presentation. But it does carry over the key information that you need from our systems. And that's hopefully going to save time and reduce errors. And the final item here is that Madrid e-filing does incorporate the Madrid regulation changes. You know that there are often changes, and their effective date, sometimes IT lags behind those changes, while Madrid e-filing is kept up to date pretty much immediately with any regulation changes, and so you'll get the benefits of all of that as well. And I think with that, we can turn over, well, okay, so I can talk about the transition resources. So you're going to see the demo from me in a second for what it looks like to walk through e-filing, but we have a lot of resources available already, and there will be more available leading up to that September 30th and October 1st date that I mentioned. So you can check out our transition website, and WIPO has some really good guidance materials. Again, they've been doing this for a while. There are 40 other countries that have this available. So you can look at their user guide. They have other pages as well. And you do need to create a WIPO account. So if you've never done this before, you will have to have a WIPO account to get into all of this because this is WIPO's system. So with that, I will attempt to share my screen. I zoomed in quite a bit for demo purposes. Hopefully that makes it a bit easier to see. But what you're seeing right now is the portfolio page, the My Portfolio page, once I've logged into Madrid e-filing. So this is a test environment. So same disclaimer that Matt gave. Hopefully everything behaves nicely, but with test environments, sometimes things don't. So we'll see what happens there. You see some filings that I had previously set up in here, and I'm going to touch on that after I go through the new application. But the first thing we do is we look for this new application button at the top, and you click on new application, which opens up the actual application functionality. So you see all the different stages that you have to go through here on the side to fill out the application. It's organized linearly. You actually cannot move onto a new section until you complete the section that you are on. So you can't really jump ahead. However, once you have completed a section, you can go back to one that you've completed already. So the first thing we have to do is select your office of origin. And so I'm going to select the United States because that's our office of origin. We have the option to change the filing language if you want to do so. And you also have the option to put in an applicant's reference number. So this is if your firm has an internal docketing system and you have docket numbers there, this is where you can do that. So I'll do USPTO demo. And then you can import the basic application or registration data from the USPTO. So I'm going to use one of the USPTO's registrations. I put it in and I click search. And here it is. So if this looks good, I click OK. And it loads and shows me that this is our primary basic. Now you can import others as the basic applications, as anybody who's done a US Office of Origin international application before knows. But if you do, one important thing to note is that Madrid e-filing forces you to have a identical mark holder and type. So that all has to be lined up. That's something that I think before you could make a mistake on, and there could potentially be problems later on, but here it forces you from the get-go. And then additional applications, the first one that you put in is what is going to be the primary basic application. So that's also worth noting as well when you're doing this filing. So now we've completed everything on here, and you can move on with this button at the top to the designations. So here you choose which countries you'd like to seek protection in, or which entities. I'm going to just scroll down and choose Canada. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm also going to select the European Union, the EU IPO. And one nice thing about this page is that if there's information relevant to your designation, that information will appear here at the bottom. So since I selected the EU IPO, it tells me all of the member states that the EU covers. There's also certain areas of the application that are unique to certain designations, and they will auto-populate as you go through. So that's another really convenient thing. So we're done here. I can click on applicants to go to the next one at the top, but since this is a longer scroll page, they also conveniently put it here at the bottom. Okay, so now on the applicant page, this information is pulled directly from the USPTO filing. Again, you don't so actually I said again, but I forgot to mention, Anyone who's done this through TZI before knows that we automatically certify certain cases. So primary, basic, one, basic, and essentially no changes is likely to be auto-certified. So that said, you can, and this will do the exact same thing. We will still auto-certify, but you can make changes. Now, there are certain areas where you have to make changes. And if you haven't filled in mandatory fields, Madrid e-filing will force you to. So you might see this and think, well, this is right. I'm just going to move through, and I know it pulled the information from the basic from the USPTO data, so I don't need to check it. But actually, we do need to include a email address here. And when I try to move forward to the next section, it won't let me because I haven't done that. So to look at this data and review and make sure we've got everything right in there, I click and it opens up the general information page, and you can see that email address is a required field. And so I will put that in. Now, this is the first time where I'm also going to note there are a few differences in terminology between what we use at the USPTO and what WIPO uses. So we'll be providing more information on that on our web pages. We will have some kind of glossary but you can see here natural person, that's the equivalent of an individual. Again, if you've done filings with WIPO before, you're probably familiar with this, but we want to make sure that people have the tools they need going into this. This example that I'm using to file is kind of an odd one since it's a USPTO registration. So the legal entity type being an agency is a little bit different, but this is where you would typically put in corporation or LLC. And for now, down here, state is actually the country and our territory is where you would put the state. And this will auto-populate properly when it pulls the data from the PTO, so you don't need to change that. We finally have to select our entitlement. So here, this is a legal entity or juristic entity, so we're just going to say we're entitled through establishment and click OK. And so now it should let us move on to representative. Okay, so representative data is also pulled from the underlying primary basic that we put into on the basic tab. One thing to note here, though, is that the email for the representative is pulled from your WIPO account. So that's just something, a minor practice tip to look out for when you're doing this. If you do want to change that, you would change that. So not much else to say on this one. We'll go to languages and correspondence. Here's the first example of something that's unique to one of the designations. The EU IPO actually requires a second language, and so we can select a second language. Of course, if I hadn't chosen the EU IPO, then that wouldn't appear. So now we'll move on to the mark. Okay, so the mark types that you're familiar with, this is another terminology difference. WIPO uses slightly different ones. This drawing being a design element and literal would be mark drawing code 3 within the USPTO's system. This does map onto a combined mark for WIPO, so you shouldn't have to worry about this. This should happen automatically, but again, this is just something that you might jump out at you. The kind of mark, individual, is just your standard trademark or service mark, and you can see WIPO also has collective certification and guarantee marks. Again, those will auto-populate correctly. And all of the other information comes over as well. So if you've got a transliteration or a translation, it should be there. You can see the mark description appears here, and so does the verbal element, or what we commonly call the literal element, or the word portion of the mark. So this all looks good. I'm going to move on to the goods and services. So on the goods and services page, you can check the box so that registration is sought for the same goods and services as in the basic. This is, I believe, always necessary if things are going to be automatically certified. But if for whatever reason you would like to change the goods and services, you can do that. First, you have to uncheck the box, and that opens up this new functionality down here where you could add a new class if you choose. Or you could modify an existing class. So to modify an existing class, you click on the class, and it will reveal all of the goods and services information listed out for that class. You can change how it's parsed. So I think right now it's set for semicolons, which is why it's breaking it out on lines like this, which is really nice. And if you want to edit it, you can go in here and edit it, or just delete it entirely. And then I'll just put that in so you can see it go to the end there. Great. There is also this functionality where you can check the classification. I think this isn't quite as useful to US filers because it's going against the Madrid's Goods and Service Manager database. So something to be aware of. I am not going to go through it in great detail now because in the interest of time. So let's go to limitations. Okay, so now say you have a limitation, right? You want to seek a smaller scope of protection in one of the designated countries or IP offices, but you don't want to actually delete those goods and services from the underlying international application, then you can add a limitation. So first you have to select which country or IPO you're going to do that limitation for. So we'll just do Canada for test purposes. And then when we select the class and add the limitation, it will show us all of those goods and services. And let's say in this one, I don't want this demo change ID language in there. You can do that, and now we have a limitation. Pretty straightforward. Claimed priorities. So this one, this will actually automatically give you the priority information if you're within 6 months of the international application filing date. The case that I'm using to demo here, even though it's a test case, it is technically registered. The data that it was created based on is registered registration data, so it's not populating here, but you'll see this when you get a chance to go in. So this is another nice convenience. Seniority claim. So this is your MM17. EU, this is unique to EU IPO. And again, just chose EU IPO so we could show you how there is IPO specific information in here, which again is convenient. So wrapping up, we've got an attachments page. If there's anything else you want to include, you can do that here. I'm not going to go through that. And then finally, the fee calculations, where it tells you how much you're going to be paying. You may have seen in our materials that today the USPTO collects fees through the TSI form. In the future, since WIPO is doing all of this for us, it will be WIPO collecting the fees on our behalf. And at least for now, those fees are in Swiss francs. So that's what you're seeing on this page. Finally, you can go to the validation page and you can download a full version of the application before it's submitted and paid for, just to check it over. This is a version that has already been submitted, but it's the full MM2. This is what it looks like. And then you'll go to payment. I'm actually not going to show the payment portion today because in our demo environment, payment is very, very slow. So but I'll take this opportunity to show another feature, which is that if at any point during this process you get interrupted or you just want to wait to file, you can click back out to My Portfolio or close the window or whatever, and it will show up here in your portfolio as an incomplete application. And then you can go right back in by clicking the serial number to pick up where you left off on the filing. So the last couple things I wanted to note is that once you have submitted the application, the status here will change to submitted to office. Submitted to office means it's been submitted to us at the USPTO. And once it is picked up by one of our Madrid processing unit specialists, it will change to office examination. Now, I mentioned before there's a new informal process that we don't have today where you could receive what we're calling a deficiency letter where there's some problem. And so if that happens, you will get an email notice, but you'll also see the status change to correction pending. And what you would do in that situation is you click on the serial number, and it's going to pull up the application page again, and you'll have these new text boxes next to whatever area where the deficiency was issued. So if I go to the goods and services, you can see in this case, the goods and services in the international application exceed the scope. Right? This is not a real situation, but you might get something like that. And you can put in a text response here. In fact, you have to put in a text response here. And if you need to, you can modify the goods and services to comply with this. And then you would go to the validation page, and it should copy over whatever your answer was, and those changes are saved. You see it automatically checked all these pages because we didn't need to go through it again. And then you hit send to send it back to the USPTO, and hopefully that will then result in the USPTO certifying the application. So once the USPTO certifies the application, it will move to a WIPO processing status. If it's been auto-processed, it will skip all of this and it will just go right to a submitted to WIPO status. So again, we'll have, WIPO has materials that explain all of these statuses, but we'll have some information for you on that as well as we get closer to the full launch on October 1st. But that, I hope, was not too dry of an overview of what the Madrid e-filing system looks like. And yeah, we're really excited about this change, and we're hoping that you all try it out.
Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate that. Yeah, great job with the demo. Really kind of fascinating and a really cool update for how things are going to go going forward. Also, really glad that folks are going to have time to sort of test it out and see before it goes becomes the way to do it on October 1st. All right, folks, I'm looking at the time, and I know we have 13 minutes left. I do want to talk to you about trademark scams. I do know some questions came in, also some suggestions for things that people would like to see changed. I'm going to try to address as many as we can with the guys before we have to get out of here. But trademark scams are a major initiative for trademarks leadership, and they wanted to make sure that we talked about it today. So a couple of things to keep in mind that you may or may not be aware of. If you've attended some of our other trainings, you might have heard about this before, but trademark scams have been really proliferating over the last several years. In terms of reports to the USPTO, you can see right here, it's up over 1,000% over the past couple of fiscal years. And most of the time it is impersonation that is taking place, where scammers are pretending to be the USPTO and tricking people into paying for stuff. Most of the time it is going to be business owners, the public in general, or our systems, but honestly, sometimes it's also attorneys. I know that law firms will sometimes receive scam communications, and the scammers aren't aware, apparently, that they're communicating with a law firm. And the most common scam methods are going to be these initial contacts. These will typically come after you have applied to register your trademark, and it'll be these unsolicited emails, phone calls, or maybe it's an online ad that you see before you even dig into filing or something along those lines. This one right here, the deceptive low-cost services for logo designs, this is absolutely a vector for fraud that we have seen where, for example, a small business owner goes to a gig site or something like that that says, I would like you to design a logo for me. And the scammer in the background says, okay, here you go. But you know what you should do is trademark this. And so they suggest trademark registration with the USPTO, but they're actually shifting them over to another part of the scam in which it is actually a scammer who is doing stuff. And maybe they never even communicate with the USPTO at all. In terms of what this context looks like overall, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is very aware of imposter scams. And as you can see, it's the third most common type of fraud that's happening here in the United States. And 1 in 5 victims are reporting a financial loss. And if you think about it, how embarrassing it may be to become a victim of a scam, whether it's a trademark scam or any other thing, it's quite possible that these are underreported in many ways. And there are more scams that are happening that people are just don't want to talk about. So trademark scams are something that we talk about a lot, and there's good reason for it because we care about you as our stakeholders, as our applicants, our registrants, our filers, the attorneys that work with our office and things like that. We want you to be protected. So a couple things to keep in mind. We are required to make your information public. All right, so as you can see, when you apply to register, your application, which includes your name, your address, and your email, becomes public record. Sometimes I'll see feedback from people saying, hey, you sold my data, or you've been hacked, or why are you letting my data leak out? That is actually not what's happening. What's happening is we are required to make it publicly available, and then the scammers say, and they reach in there and grab that info and immediately start contacting you. As you can see, they mine the data for new targets, and then they will contact you by phone if you include your phone number. Shout out right here. Remember, you do not need to include a phone number in your application. It is not an application requirement. So if you want to avoid scam phone calls and scam texts, One way that you might be able to do that is by not including your telephone number in your application. Your choice, it's up to you. So they will pull that data, and I'm sorry, I just didn't want that to come off as victim shaming or blaming here. If you're a person who happens to have your phone number in there, just be aware it's not a requirement, okay? And they will hit you with these invoices, which, by the way, we never send an invoice, and these urgent warnings and these misleading offers. I'm going to show you a couple of examples here in a few minutes. And as you'll see, these are designed to look like they're coming from the USPTO, but they are really not. Here's one that is happening right now, this verification appointment scam that's going around. You can see this is, I grabbed a copy of an email and redacted some of the information here. This one came out last week. To one of our stakeholders. They had filed, and then within X number of hours, X number of days, the scammers contacted them. You can tell a couple of things here from this email. For example, USPTO space gov. That's not how we send emails, folks. And it was, I'm assuming, going to be a situation where it was a spoofed email address, and so they tried to make it look like USPTO.gov, but it really was coming from a scammer. They often will include, I erased it here, but a serial number. And then they have this thing that they refer to as a verification appointment. In trademarks, guys, this is not a thing. There is no verification appointment. So if you are someone who receives an email like this that is filled with information like your trademark, your serial number, all this information that they have pulled from your file to make it look legit, it actually isn't. So in this case, they're also saying, somebody in this examining attorney, and they'll include a name here. Sometimes the person does work for the USPTO, but not as a trademark examining attorney. And they'll include things like they'll make up what law office it has been assigned to. In this particular case, this was a fairly recently filed application, had not been assigned to a law office and had not been assigned to an examining attorney. So here again, the scammers are just using names and a phone number that directs to them and not to the USPTO, and they're just making up something like, oh, it's in law office such and such with this examining attorney. Neither of those things are true, and certainly not in this case, because it hadn't been assigned to an examining attorney yet. The last thing that I want to point out to you on this page, be prepared to confirm your owner name. We do not set them an appointment for any of this stuff to confirm your owner name, your serial number. We're the ones who give you the serial number, so there's no need for you to confirm the serial number. Confirming a business address, duration of business use. I'm not even sure what that means. We don't do a confirmation or a verification of that stuff. Goods and services, we're not verifying your goods or services. You do that by submitting specimens of use that will, in your application, that will show you have been how you're using it with your goods and services. Position in the company, look, we're not going to just reach out to applicant and say, what is your position in the company? That's not how we would do it. There's also no such thing as us verifying a business description. Again, I'm not even sure what that is, and we absolutely are not going to ask you for your EIN. So you can see here the scammer is doing some work. They're threading in some legit information with some other stuff to try to trick you into giving away information that is going to help them as they try to scam you. This sort of thing, the verification appointment, we do not do it. Okay, so if you see something like that, no, it's not us. I just want to briefly hit these attestation scams. This is one that's the attestation stuff has been going around for a while. Again, there is no attestation fee that we charge you. On the left-hand side here, you can see that they have tried to create their own version of an office action. Those of you who have ever received an office action from us know, hey, that ain't what it looks like. And there's all this sort of junk stuff in here about getting a letter of approval and clearance certificate. I don't even know what that is, from Department of Commerce, Department of State, and the Federal Trade Commission. And supposedly there's a $499 attestation charge. And apparently some sort of permanent ban. So as you can see, they're trying to scare you into thinking, oh no, something's gonna happen. I'm gonna have to go to jail. So there's just weird sorts of stuff that's in here that if you do a little bit of research, you realize that's not real. And also, I would point out up here on the top here, this is again an invoice. These are fake. We do not send you an invoice in the mail. They have grabbed our logo and are misusing our logo. And what I wanted to highlight for you here, it's a little fuzzy. It might be a little fuzzy on your screen, but they're charging for an EIN business number registration. Again, don't need your EIN, and we certainly would not charge you for it if we needed it. And then there's this attestation service for your business name and business design. I don't even know what that means, and we don't do it. Okay, so this attestation stuff is really their attempt to try to trick you into paying some of these junk fees. And it's also going to be fuzzy on your screen, but down here in the bottom of this, it says final payment, nothing else required for you to pay in the future. That's simply not true. There is no way that you can pay one fee and boom, be done for the rest of the life of your trademark registration. That's not how it works. So just be aware of those things and keep an eye out for them. So a couple of scam reminders. I'm looking at the time. I see we only had 3 minutes left. So here's the deal. You will be contacted by impersonators after you file. Sometimes they're doing it within 24 to 48 hours. I heard a report from a colleague that it was same day they received some scam stuff after they had filed. So, you know, maybe they filed in the morning and then by the afternoon or evening, a scammer was going, "Bah, bah, 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 bah. You've got to do all this, pay all this sorts of money. Otherwise, you're going to lose your trademark." Nope, not true. There are ways that you can try to confirm whether or not the communication is accurate or legit. You can contact the Trademark Assistance Center, or you can look up your case yourself in the Trademark Status and Document Retrieval System. Just use the 8-digit serial number. Reminder, we will never ask you for your personal or payment information over the phone, in an email, or via text. We don't text, first of all, and we are not going to be asking you for that information over the phone or an email. And same thing with requiring payment in these different ways: wire transfer, gift card, cash, check, money order to some third-party address. No, the government has a federal payment system. That's, you know, we're using that. So you'll be told in your office action, if you want to move forward, this is what you owe. Your choice. Here's how you go about paying it. But we're not going to call you up and say, "Hey, you got to pay us now, 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 now." Not going to happen. All right. Last thing is, I will say here is, I want you to make sure that you know that you too can help take steps. If you become a victim of a fraud or a scam, you can take action. We always recommend you email tmscams@uspto.gov, forward that email that you received, maybe forward that voicemail that you received, tell us what happened. You can also file a complaint with the FTC. It's happened enough that there's even a USPTO sort of like little link that has our logo, our initials in it, so they'll know it's coming from us. Talk to your attorney general. Contact the Better Business Bureau. If it's cybercrime, you can reach out to the FBI. If it's something that came over the phone or a text, you could reach out to the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. If it is something like that came in the mail, you could contact the U.S. Postal Inspectors Service or Inspection Service as well. And you can also contact your bank or your financial institution to see if you can get that money back. All right, real quick resources because you only have a minute left. These are just highlights. You're going to see these when you are able to download a copy of the slide deck here in whenever we get a chance to post the recording. The link right there is to updates about Trademark Center. Matt is always having that stuff updated so you can see what's happening with Trademark Center. Peter did a lot of chatting here about Madrid e-filing, and I know a lot of you had questions about that. You can select or see the link that we have right there to learn more about the transition. And also there's information about trademark scams, and you can see the link there for the Trademark Assistance Center. All right, guys. We're now at the top of the hour, and we do need to get out of here. I see we do have some questions that did come in. There's something that I did want to hit before we go. Anthony had asked a question about should he apply for the Madrid Protocol if his trademark status is pending. Anthony, just want to note, you were never required to apply for international protection. This is up to you as a business owner if it's something that you want or think that you need for your business. There's a lot of other good stuff that is in here. Anna asked a question about whether we are going to send out a reminder for when post-registration maintenance documents are due. The answer, Anna Iris, is yes. Yes, we do. We send out a courtesy email reminder at the beginning of the window for when your Section 8 or your Section 8 and 9 is due. So Whew, we have too much to answer here, and we do have to end the webinar. But I want you to know, I see great questions in here. Thank you, Allison. I've got your questions and also some of your suggestions in here. Rose had a question and also a suggestion here as well. And also Mary has some stuff too. Sarah, so we see it, okay? I'm going to make sure that the guys have copies of all these things, and if there are things that we can put out to help you with the answers to these questions, we're happy to do it. I'd also recommend for you concerned or thinking about Madrid filing through WIPO, make sure you take a look at those resources that Peter recommended. There may be some questions to your answers already in some of those materials. All right, that was a lot of fast talking. We're a minute over, so sorry about that. So we do have to say goodbye right now, but thank you very, very much for being with us today, folks. And a big thank you to Peter and to Matt and also to Darcy for running the WebEx and also to our captioner for doing the captions for today. We do appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention and thank you for sending in the questions. If it's something we can answer next month in our next USPTO hour, we're happy to do so. Otherwise, we'll be posting a recording as soon as we can to the event page. We'll also be posting a copy of the slides as well. So thanks again, folks. Really appreciate you. Have a great month and take care.